What would you do if one day the HOA sends a lawyer to evict you from your own land, just because her son wants a spot to build his honeymoon home? This story isn't about a fence painted the wrong color. It's not about grass growing over 3 inches. This is the story of a farmer being told to vacate his ancestral ranch by a shadow HOA, a Karen with too much money and not enough conscience, and a circling shark of a real estate conglomerate. But they forgot one thing. You can't intimidate a man who's weathered storms his entire life, and this is how I, a regular man, turned their entire system into a public spectacle. I had just finished feeding the horses when the landline rang in the living room. The sound echoed through the thick wooden walls of the house my grandfather built with his own hands back in the 60s. My hands were still dusty with hay. I wiped them off on my jeans and picked up. "Is this Mr. Tyler Adams?" A voice as cold as steel cut through the line. "Speaking," I said, uncertain. "This is Attorney Gregory Finch. I represent Mrs. Veronica Langley." His tone was icy, like reading out an indictment. "She is requesting that you vacate the property located at 319 Ranch Hollow Lane within 30 days. Her son, Scott Langley, is getting married and requires the space to build their home. This is not a request. If necessary, we will litigate." I nearly dropped the phone. "Excuse me? You hear me. Mrs. Langley has decided your ranch is the ideal place for her son's new life. She hopes you'll leave peacefully. Otherwise, we'll initiate formal eviction proceedings." I froze. The cold, matter-of-fact tone had zero hesitation. I steadied myself. "This ranch isn't part of the HOA. I own this land outright. Nobody has a say here but me." "We're currently reviewing original land records," he replied. "Mrs. Langley believes your lot falls within the HOA's jurisdiction. You'll be formally notified soon." Click. The call ended, leaving a cold dial tone in my ear. My hand clenched the receiver. Then I turned toward the window, and the scene outside nearly made my blood boil. Right there on my front lawn, Veronica Langley, curled blonde hair straight out of the 80s, wearing a blinding hot pink tracksuit, like she'd just stepped out of a reality show, was strolling across my land, clipboard in hand, as if taking inventory of her property. Behind her, 2 men in black suits surveying my horse barn and tool shed like they already owned the place. Stormed out onto the porch, my heartbeat pounding like a war drum. "Hey, Veronica, what the hell are you doing on my property?" She turned and flashed the fakest smile I've ever seen. "Just doing a little preliminary inspection before renovations, Tyler. You'll be moving out soon, so I want everything ready for Scott and his bride-to-be." One of the suited goons started jotting notes. Tool shed, barn, even the old well that's been here since my great-grandfather's time. "Stop!" I shouted. "You are trespassing!" Veronica giggled. "You might want to check the roadside, sweetheart." I turned around. At the end of the driveway, someone had just put up a huge sign. "Future home of Scott and Madeline Langley." That's when I started shaking. Not with fear, but with rage. But it didn't end there. A brand new silver pickup truck revved down the road and parked right on my lawn. Out stepped a young man in a shiny blue suit, hair slicked back, holding an engagement ring box like it was a badge of entitlement. He grinned. "Hey, Tyler, thanks for prepping the space for us. Maddie and I really appreciate it." I stood still, stunned. I'd never signed anything. Never agreed to anything, never even talked to them about any of this. And yet here Scott Langley was, patting me on the shoulder like I'd just handed him the family fortune, my fists clenched. I was about ready to knock that smug smile off his face when I heard Veronica snap her fingers. The 2 suited men headed straight toward my front door. "No!" I dashed. Forward, boots thudding on the old wooden porch steps. They were actually about to enter my home. "Stop right there! Get off my property now!" One of them had his hand on the doorknob. "This is unlawful trespassing," I roared. "This is your final warning." Veronica still smiled, but I saw her eyes twitch. Maybe she thought I'd be just as Easy to push around as the folks inside the HOA. She was dead wrong. Scott scoffed. Come on, old man, time to pack up. We're giving you 2 weeks to leave peacefully. I stared at him, my blood boiling. But I knew if I threw the first punch, they'd twist the story and call the cops on me, so I stepped back and pulled out my phone. You have 30 seconds to leave my land or I'm calling Sheriff Harrison myself. Veronica's face felt like she'd just been slapped. Scott turned pale. The two suits backed away toward the car. Veronica hissed, You'll be hearing from my lawyer, you stubborn hick. We will be back, Scott shouted. I said nothing, just stood my ground, phone in hand, eyes locked on theirs. Only after the last tire rolled off my dirt road did I finally exhale. The storm had come knocking, and I knew this was only the beginning. The next morning, I thought I'd get at least 1 peaceful hour to feed the horses and mend the southern fence. But life's never that simple. I had just poured my coffee when I heard an engine rumbling down the dirt road. I stepped onto the porch and nearly dropped my mug. A massive moving truck was parked smack in the middle of my front yard, its wheels sunk into the red clay like it had always belonged there. And standing beside it, Scott Langley, arms crossed, wearing flashy sunglasses and a smug grin. Next to him, Veronica Langley held up a massive banner that read, Welcome to the new home of Scott and Madeline. Behind the truck, I saw a swarm of movers hauling out furniture. A baby crib, even a king-sized mattress, heading straight toward my front door. I stepped down from the porch, more like gritted my way down. Each step dug deep into the gravel, my boots driven by tension. Scott, what the hell do you think you're doing? Veronica beamed like she'd just won the lottery. We're moving in, Tyler. The house, the furniture, everything's ready. You were so kind to leave it all empty. You mean trespassing? I said through clenched teeth. I already told you. There's no way I'm giving up this land, Scott laughed. You're old, man. Time to retire. You've had your run. Now it's our turn. I pulled out the property records from the county office and slapped them in my palm. This is proof of lawful ownership. No HOA, no transfer. This ranch is mine. Veronica didn't flinch. She just smiled, this time ice cold. You may own the land, Tyler, but we control the essentials: water, road access, electricity, and building permits. I've already asked the HOA to start processing things. It won't be long before you can't even survive out here. I was speechless for a moment. A chill crept up my spine. What if she was serious? Scott stepped forward, brimming with arrogance. You can sue, but you'll just wither away. Fines, complaints, service cutoffs. The more you fight, the more you lose. Walk away now and save yourself the pain. Meanwhile, the movers kept advancing. Up my porch, one carried a baby crib, another held kitchen boxes. As if my home were just a stage in Karen's suburban soap opera, but I didn't scream. I didn't swing. I pulled out my phone, turned on the camera, captured everything. I shouted, "Everything is being recorded. This is evidence of trespassing. Attempted asset seizure and abuse of legal documents." Veronica froze. Scott looked rattled, if only for a second, then waved it off. "Film all you want. We'll say you gave us permission. That you're senile. That you promised to hand over the land. No one's gonna believe some old farmer." I swallowed the rage and walked straight to my truck. Said nothing. But my brain was on fire. Where? "Are you going, Tyler?" Veronica called after me. "Time for your meds? Isn't it nap time for the elderly?" I didn't answer. I got into my truck, locked the doors, and called the Ridge Valley Sheriff's Department. "Sheriff here," came the familiar voice of Hank Lewis. "Hank, it's Tyler Adams over at 319 Ranch Hollow. I need the police here ASAP. There are people moving in on my land without permission. They're trespassing in my home." "Understood. We're on our way. Stay calm, Tyler." I hung up and looked back at the circus happening on my lawn. "Not for long," I muttered. "Not for long." 15 minutes later, 2 squad cars screamed down the dirt road, sirens blaring. Their lights lit up the entire yard. Scott's jaw dropped. Veronica dropped her banner. The movers scattered like deer spotting wolves. I stepped out of the truck and handed Sheriff Hank Lewis the video on my phone. He watched for a few seconds, then looked up, face like stone. He turned to Veronica. "Ma'am, you and these individuals need to vacate the premises immediately. This is private property. You have no legal right to be here." Veronica opened her mouth to argue. "But this land was supposed to be my son's. He deserves—" "Not a legal matter," Hank interrupted. "No title, no claim. You don't leave, I arrest you." Scott grimaced, ready to protest, until Hank's eyes flicked toward the holstered gun on his hip. That shut him up. The crew began hauling things back. Boxes were thrown into the truck like trash. Veronica stomped like a toddler. "This isn't fair. This isn't over." "It ends when you leave, ma'am," Hank replied, cold as steel. Veronica shot one last glare my way, then climbed into Scott's car. The truck backed out of my yard, dragging with it a cloud of dust and the shattered delusions of the Langley family. I leaned against my truck, exhausted but strangely light. "You okay, Tyler?" Hank asked, patting my shoulder. "I'm fine, thanks. Don't let them scare you. You've got the law on your side." "I know, but I don't think this is the last of it." Hank nodded slowly. "Stay sharp. And if they come back, call us." I nodded, heading back into the house, but I knew I'd sleep with the shotgun by the bed tonight, because the snake may have slithered back into the brush, but it sure as hell wasn't dead yet. I thought things had settled down after the police kicked the Langleys off my land. I thought so. Until 3 days later, while I was feeding my 2 shepherd dogs breakfast, a white pickup truck pulled up to my gate. On the door was a bold logo, Ridge, Valley Utilities. A man in a reflective vest and hard hat stepped out, clipboard in hand, eyes glazed over like he was there to fix a light pole, not ignite a war. "Morning," he said. "I'm here to shut off your water." I frowned. "You've got the wrong address." He flipped a paper. 319 Ranch Hollow Lane? I nodded. No mistake. "Order from the HOA. Cutting service due to unpaid fees." I stood in stunned silence. For a few seconds, then let out a crooked laugh, half disbelief, half fury. "I am not in an HOA." He shrugged. "Don't know. I just follow orders. If you've got proof, show it. Otherwise, I have to shut the valve." I pulled out my phone and showed him photos of my deed and a certified document from the county land office confirming I was not part of any HOA. He glanced through it and scratched his head. "Huh. Weird. Well, you'll have to take that up with the HOA office. I'll give you until the end of the day to clear it up. Otherwise," he drew his thumb across his neck. "Bye-bye, water." Then he hopped back into his truck, revved the engine, and drove off, leaving behind a cloud of dust and a pressure cooker of rage in my chest. Without wasting a second, I tossed my jacket in the passenger seat, started the engine, and drove straight to the Ridge Valley HOA office. The building looked like a modern fortress in the center of town. Marble, glass walls, glowing signage. Ridge Valley HOA, preserving community value. "Preserve my ass," I muttered, grinding my teeth. I pushed the doors open. The air inside was sterile as a morgue. A receptionist with a ponytail and the expression of someone swatting a fly looked up at me. "How can I help you?" Her voice was sweet, like a razor dipped in honey. "I don't belong to your HOA, so why the hell?" "Are you people ordering my water shut off?" She clacked away at her keyboard. "Address?" I gave it. A moment later, she looked up and smiled, like she'd just read my obituary. "Got it. The property at 319 was annexed into Ridge Valley HOA 3 days ago. Here's the file." I snatched the document from her and nearly cursed out loud. My name, Tyler Adams, scrawled across the bottom. Sloppy, clearly forged. I had never signed this. No one even dared ask me to. But on paper, It looked like I'd voluntarily joined the HOA, a blatant forgery. "This is fake," I growled. She shrugged, indifferent. "Sir, if you dispute this, you'll need to speak with the board. They're in a meeting down the hall?" I didn't reply. My feet were already stomping down the polished wood hallway. I burst open the conference room doors and found exactly what I expected. Veronica Langley, seated at the head of the table, smirking at the so-called board. "And once we cut his water, he won't be able to survive out there," I heard her say. "Syrupy smooth." The whole room burst into laughter. My fists clenched. I stormed in like a thundercloud. Silence fell instantly. I slammed my deed and county certification onto the table. "These are the only legal documents that matter here. That other one, that's criminal fraud." Veronica stood, adjusting her blazer. "You're interrupting a private meeting. I'm not leaving until you cancel this forged annexation. Faking my signature, that's a felony. I've already called my lawyer. And unless you want to be tonight's headline on HOA abuses, power, I suggest you say thank you and goodbye." An elderly man at the end of the table, looked like Jenkins, the only one who still remembered right from wrong, nervously asked, "Karen? I mean, Veronica, is this true?" "Of course not. He's delusional, senile," Veronica snapped. I let out a dry laugh. "Want to try that defense in court?" Dead silence. Then a woman named Nancy stood up. "I motion to revoke the annexation. Immediately." "Seconded," Jenkins added. The rest of the board nodded like sparrows in a windstorm. I made them sign the revocation right there. I filmed every signature. Veronica signed last, her hand shaking like she had Parkinson's. When she finished, she glared at me. "You'll regret humiliating me in front of the entire board." I smirked. "The only thing I regret is thinking you ever understood boundaries." I left the building like walking away from a battlefield. Papers in hand, blood still boiling, but at least my water would stay on. And the HOA had just taken a sledgehammer to the face. I thought it was over, but that night, as I pulled into my driveway, a sheriff's cruiser was parked out front. Deputy Carter stepped out, face like granite. "Tyler," he said, "we've got a new problem." I exhaled. "What now?" Carter handed me a thick stack of papers, looked like a damn phone book, court summons. Veronica had filed a lawsuit, claiming emotional distress, defamation, and obstruction of rightful property transfer. I looked at Carter. He just said one sentence. "Welcome to the legal war, Tyler." I used to think that as long as I kept to myself, I'd never have to step foot in a courtroom. I was wrong. 3 weeks after the forged signature scandal, I found myself in the dusty hallway of the Ridge Valley County Courthouse, arms full with a stack of files thicker than a mortgage ledger. On one side, property maps, my deed, trespass footage, pictures of the Welcome Scott sign, the crumpled banner on my lawn, and a notarized statement from the county land office proving I wasn't under any HOA jurisdiction. On the other side was the name Veronica Langley, plaintiff, with a list of absurd accusations, obstruction of rightful ownership, defamation, emotional distress, and, laughably, indirect threat of force. I stepped into that courtroom with more than just evidence. I brought the quiet fury of a man who lived honorably and was being targeted by unchecked greed. Veronica was already seated on the plaintiff's side, wearing a crimson dress and pearl necklace the size of quail eggs. Beside her sat Scott, in a slim gray suit looking like he was headed to prom. Their lawyer, a pudgy man named Melvin Crane, hair slicked back, smile greasier than diner bacon, the kind of guy who makes a living suing folks who can't afford defense. I represented myself because no one knows the truth better than I do. And this time, the truth was on my side. 3 hours later, I realized I was sitting through a full-blown courtroom comedy. Crane started with a speech longer than an Oscar acceptance. He called Veronica a devoted citizen who only wanted the best for her son, painted me as a tyrant abusing his position, and described Veronica's fear and trauma from being denied access to her son's future home site. Veronica dabbed her eyes with a silk handkerchief, gasping like she'd just run a marathon. Scott leaned back, legs crossed, nodding smugly like he'd just invented brunch. When my turn came, I didn't argue with emotion. I argued with facts. I explained the ranch's history, purchased by my grandfather in 1967, legally handed down from my father in 2005, with zero legal connection to any HOA. I presented my evidence, the original property deed photos of the future home of Scott and Madeline, sign footage of Veronica directing movers on my property, a video of Scott saying, "You can help us move in," and, the knockout punch, a clip of the HOA employee saying, "I'm just following Mrs. Langley's orders." The other side objected. Furiously, out of context, one-sided, but the judge, a silver-haired woman with glasses and a stare colder than granite, said simply, "Sit down. I'm watching." And when she saw the footage of Veronica shouting, "Hurry up before the old man changes his mind," she put her pen down. Then she looked straight at Veronica. "Mrs. Langley, you have no legal claim to this land." Forging, signatures, attempting forced removal, and weaponizing the HOA as a tool of intimidation constitute serious violations. The court hereby finds the defendant, Mr. Tyler Adams, fully innocent. This case is dismissed. No one in the room dared breathe. It felt like I'd just come up for air after nearly drowning in a sea of deceit. But the judge wasn't finished. "Mr. Adams, if you wish to file a countersuit for defamation or property damages, this court is ready to hear it." I looked over at Veronica. Her face was pale, fingers digging into the armrest. Scott looked like someone had just canceled his inheritance. I took a deep breath and shook my head. "Your Honor, I just want to go home." "Yeah," Judge nodded. "A wise man." The gavel came down. Thud. Case closed. I turned and walked out of that courtroom. Veronica couldn't even lift her eyes. Scott pretended to stare at the floor. Only when I stepped onto the courthouse steps did I truly feel sunlight again, warm and steady for the first time in weeks. It felt like justice, at last, had returned to my doorstep. The ranch was safe. I'd won this round, but when I got home, before I could even take off my boots, I saw someone already sitting on the porch swing. A man in a sharp black suit, shoes polished, posture perfect, looked like a land developer. He stood up and extended a hand. "Mr. Adams, I'm Trevor Price, representing Price Developments. I heard this ranch might be changing hands soon. Mrs. Langley promised to pass it along once you were out." I stood frozen. My throat suddenly became dry. "I'm prepared to offer $500,000 in cash." I stared at him, unblinking. "You've got the wrong guy," I said. "I don't sell land. I don't sell memories. And I damn sure don't sell out my ancestors to people like you." Trevor smiled, a snake's grin. "Everyone has a price, Mr. Adams. I'll be in touch." He left a card on the railing, then strolled back to a sleek black SUV parked nearby. I clenched the business card in my hand. The feeling of victory hadn't even cooled, and already a new storm was rolling in. Veronica may have lost, but the war, it was just getting started. I used to think Veronica Langley was the head snake. Turns out she was just the fang. The real serpent had just raised its head on my porch with a porcelain white smile and a $500,000 cash offer. Trevor Price. A name straight out of a land broker's business card. But his eyes, they weren't casual. They weren't negotiable. He looked at me like a predator spotting his final meal before retirement. And when I said not for sale, he didn't flinch. He just smiled. That kind of smile that says, "I'll get what I want or crush you trying." I thought that would be the end of it. But exactly 3 nights later, past midnight, the dogs went berserk. I shot up in bed, grabbing the shotgun beside me, a habit ever since Karen tried to move into my house. I stepped out onto the porch, flashlight sweeping toward the stables. There were people, 2 shadows, one holding a gas can, the other a lighter. I didn't even think. Boom! One blast into the sky, thunder rolling across the fields. They dropped the can and bolted, sprinting back to a pickup parked near my fence line. I gave chase, flashlight dancing across the dirt as I yelled, "I see your faces! You're done!" They peeled out, back tires chewing earth, vanishing into the dark. I stood in the moonlight, heart pounding. The gas can was sealed, the barn untouched. But I knew one thing for sure. This wasn't a legal battle anymore. This was war. I called. Deputy Carter immediately, 2 rings. He picked up, half asleep. "Tyler?" "They just tried to burn down my stable." Silence. Then, "I'm on my way." By the time Carter and another deputy arrived, I'd already snapped photos of the footprints, the gas can, and pulled up blurry infrared footage from the security cam I'd installed last week. Carter watched the footage, shook his head. "They're going below the belt now. I don't care who they are," I said. "I'm not backing down." "Then it's time you upgrade everything," Carter replied, firm hand on my shoulder. "They're playing dirty. You need to play smart." Next day, I installed 4 more cameras, hidden in tree trunks and chicken coops, reinforced the barn doors with steel frames, bought 2 more dogs, Duke and Shadow, German shepherds the size of baby bears with tempers like fire. I wanted them to know, if they came back, I wouldn't just film, I'd fight. But Price didn't return with fire. He came back with legal camouflage. A week later, I received a letter from the Ridge Valley County Development Office, an official notice of eminent domain, meaning the government could force me to sell if it was for the public good. Guess who was listed as the proposed development partner? Trevor Price Enterprises. I nearly tore the letter to pieces. I stormed into the county land office, face hot with fury. The director's name was Hargrove, paper-thin skin and eyes like dead fish. "I want to know who authorized the takeover of my family's land for some damn resort." He didn't blink. "Mr. Adams, the council has deemed Ranch Hollow suitable for future residential development. You will be fairly compensated." I slammed the table. "Someone tried to torch my barn last night. Now you're trying to force a sale? And the company you've handed it to? Trevor Price, the same man who showed up at my house last week waving money, still expressionless. Prove it." I nearly flipped the chair. These people don't care about justice. They listen to money. I walked out boiling. That night I sat on my porch, staring out over the moonlit fields, gut twisted in knots. They have money, lawyers, a cowardly county government behind them. But I had the truth. And something they'd never be able to buy, the power of the people. 2 days later, I gathered every scrap of evidence, family records, arson footage, the eminent domain letter, historic ranch maps, and walked into the office of the one person who could help, Abby Collins, veteran reporter from the local news station. I laid everything on her desk. She read, listened, and finally looked up. "Mr. Adams, you just handed me the biggest story of the year." I clenched my fist. "You gonna run it?" she smiled. But not the kind of smile Veronica gave. It was the smile of someone who'd been pushed to the edge before and learned how to push back. "Not just run it," she said. "I'm going to burn their whole damn nest down." 3 days after I met with Abby Collins, my story hit the evening news like a storm tearing through Ridge Valley. Headline read, "Family Farm Threatened by Developer. Landowner Battles Shadow, HOA, and Complicated Officials." The segment showed everything. Me confronting Veronica in my yard. The utility worker admitted to the water shutoff order, a development map showing plans for a luxury resort right on my land. Security footage of two men attempting to torch my stable at midnight. Abby didn't pull punches. She didn't soften. She didn't dodge anyone. She named names. Trevor Price, Veronica Langley, Director Hargrove, and even the County Development Board. The report lasted 14 minutes, but hit harder than any local election scandal. The next morning, my phone wouldn't stop ringing. Neighbors called, "Saw you on TV! Damn good, Tyler!" The grocery store clerk texted, "If you need signatures against the land grab, my whole family's in." Even an old man I'd never met knocked on my door. My granddaughter saw the report and made me bring you pumpkin bread. Said, "Grandpa, that's the man protecting all of Ridge Valley." Meanwhile, at City Hall, protests, banners, signs outside the gates. "Give Tyler his farm back." "No resort. Yes to justice." Hundreds showed up daily, confronting the board, demanding investigations. Trevor Price tried spinning the media. "We just want to build community." "I have no ties to the HOA. There's no proof I did anything wrong." But the press wasn't stupid. The people weren't stupid. And Abby Collins, she wasn't done. 1 week later, the county officially revoked the eminent domain order. They even issued a public apology on the evening news, admitting oversight and that they'd been influenced by developer pressure. As for Price, he lost 3 major contracts across neighboring counties, his name plastered on bulletin boards and Facebook groups, labeled "the suit with a shovel." I heard his company took a multi-million-dollar hit from the fallout. Veronica vanished from Ridge Valley. Rumor has it she moved in with her cousin out of state. Scott hasn't been seen since the court hearing. One afternoon, I was on the porch sipping iced tea with Duke and Shadow when an old black pickup rolled into the yard. I stood, hand resting on the shotgun, until the door opened. Out stepped an old man, silver beard, cowboy hat tilted against the sun. "You Tyler Adams?" "I am." "I'm Earl, run the hardware store in town. My granddad used to talk about this ranch, said it's the lifeblood of Ridge Valley." I gave him a nod. He walked closer and held out his hand. In his palm was a small bronze medal, worn and aged, with an inscription on the back, "For honor and courage." "We all saw you stand your ground for us," he said. "Don't let them make you second-guess yourself. You're a symbol now." I took the medal. It felt heavy like lead, but warm like a winter stove. That night, I sat alone on the porch staring at the moonlit field, listening to the insects, the wind sliding over the white fence my grandfather built by hand. I thought about it all: Karen, Trevor, the arsonists, the forged HOA, even City Hall. Every single one wanted me gone, but I was still here, still breathing, still fighting. And for the first time in years, I realized this land wasn't just mine anymore. It belonged to everyone who still believed in right and wrong, in truth, in the idea that money can't buy everything. One crisp autumn morning, while I was feeding Duke and Shadow, I noticed a strange car parked about 30 feet from my gate. Deep green paint, expensive-looking sedan, engine off, but no sign of movement. I squinted. No HOA plates, no company, Lagos, and definitely not a local. I set the bowl down, wiped my hands, and walked the gravel path to the gate. The closer I got, the clearer the figure inside became. A woman, short hair, sunglasses, petite build. Something about her was familiar. When I stopped at the gate, she opened the door and took off her glasses, and I froze. Madeline Langley, the bride-to-be from that whole love conquers land rights farce Veronica once tried to stage. I gripped the gate tight. "What do you want?" Madeline didn't flinch. No excuses, no performative remorse. She took a deep breath. "I'm not here to ask forgiveness. I needed to come. I used to believe Scott, his mother, all of it. That you were old, that you were planning to leave. that this was a wedding gift. I said nothing, just watched her. Madeline nodded slowly. I know I was stupid. I didn't know the truth until it was too late. She reached into her bag and pulled out a thick envelope, holding it over the gate. I eyed it like poison. What is this? A wedding gift from my father. He said if Scott and I truly wanted to build a life, it should be earned, not stolen from someone else. I took the envelope, waited for her to say more. She only said softly, "When you're ready, open it." She returned to her car, started the engine, but before she drove off, she rolled down the window and looked at me one last time. You're a good man, Mr. Adams. Scott didn't deserve this place. But I hope your ranch becomes something more than just a place to live. And then she was gone. I stood there for several more minutes, then walked back to the porch and opened the envelope. Inside was a certified bank check, stamped and sealed, for the amount of $750,000. Signed by Thomas G. Maxwell, timber magnate of the Western region, known for being stern and honorable. Alongside it, a handwritten note. Mr. Adams, that land isn't for swindlers. It's for men like you. If you wish to expand, invest, or simply rest, this is yours. No strings, no conditions. Thomas G. Maxwell. I held the check. My heart pounded, not because of the number, but because justice had just arrived in the form of a handwritten letter. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat beside Duke and Shadow, watching starlight drip over the white fence my grandfather had once hammered in by hand. I thought of everything. The phone. Call demanding I leave. The future home of Scott Langley sign. 2 men with gasoline at my stables. And now, a check that opened doors I never imagined. One thing I knew for sure, I wasn't going anywhere. But maybe I could build something. Bigger than myself. 2 months later, the ground was broken. Not for a mansion. No gold-plated bathtubs, no golf course. Instead, I founded Whitestone Acres, a working farm and recovery center for veterans seeking healing, young adults wanting to learn agriculture, and those who'd been crushed by HOAs and needed a place to start over. The name came from the row of white stones my grandfather once laid along the western fence line. Not flashy, not massive, just steady, like rural folks' faith in what's right. When the center opened, visitors weren't just farmers. There were retired teachers, veterans with PTSD, orphans searching for belonging, and people who'd once been driven from their homes by HOA boards, now learning how to live freely away from approved fence heights and paint color mandates. Whitestone Acres wasn't just a farm, it was a declaration. We don't retreat, and we don't forget. One early winter morning, with frost still dusting the grass and trainees at Whitestone Acres tightening saddles for the day's lesson, I saw a familiar silhouette walking toward the fence. It was Deputy Carter, same old cowboy hat, hands in pockets, calm as ever. "Heard you've got some new recruits," he said. 3 young guys, one just out of the Navy, 2 others lost their land to HOA seizures. Carter chuckled. "You've really turned this place into a fortress." I shrugged. No one's meant to live on their knees forever. I just show them. When you stand, you're not standing alone. Carter grew serious, then handed me the latest paper. Bold headline across the front page. Trevor Price officially. Stripped of real estate licenses in 3 counties, Veronica Langley faces class action, lawsuit for fraud. Could face 5 years in prison. I skimmed the article. Price had liquidated his holdings and fled the state. Veronica was being sued by 14 former residents for abuse of power and coercion. And Scott? Gone. Rumors said he was driving for a delivery service in another state. Carter looked at me, voice steady. "You won. Not just for yourself. For the whole damn town." I smiled. "I'm just a farmer holding on to his land. They made themselves the villains." That evening, the town held a small celebration at Whitestone Acres. There was pie, hot coffee, and a live bluegrass band playing inside the barn, now converted into a community hall. From the wooden benches, I saw faces that used to avoid eye contact under HOA rule, now singing loud, clapping, laughing. People came up to shake my hand, give me hats, and bring me saplings. A little boy tugged at my sleeve and asked, "Mister, can I be a ranch owner like you one day?" I paused, throat tight. "No," I said. "You'll do even better than me." That night, I sat alone on the porch. Duke and Shadow sprawled lazily on either side like old sentries. The breeze whispered through rows of lavender the trainees had planted that morning. I reached for the medal the old man from the hardware store had once given me. For honor and courage. I understood now. Courage isn't being fearless. It's standing up when fear tells you to sit down. And honor isn't a medal on your chest. It's the way people remember you when you're gone. Veronica Langley once thought she could control everything. Trevor Price believed money could buy land, silence, even governments. But they forgot one simple truth. You can't buy the truth. And you can't outwit the love for land, for people, and for peace that folks like me spend a lifetime guarding. Now, when someone asks me about legacy, I don't talk about acreage, lot size, or land deeds. I just say, legacy is what not even an HOA can erase. It's what makes others stand beside you, even if all you have is a dog, a shotgun, and a heart that doesn't back down. My story didn't end with a court ruling. It didn't end with a for sale sign. It ended with a lavender field. In bloom, a generation of trainees learning to ride for the first time, and an old man, finally, sleeping soundly after many long years. They thought I would back down. They sent lawyers, HOAs, and millionaire developers to force me out. They raised signs, forged papers, even staged cameras. But what they didn't know was this. I'm not the kind of man who backs down under threat. I stand. And when I stand, I win. And I didn't just keep my land. I turned it into a place for healing, for growth, a sanctuary where those cast out by HOAs could find hope again. My ranch isn't a resort. It's a symbol. That. You can't steal from someone what they're willing to fight to protect.